Hello, everyone. I'm back after a very long hiatus from YouTube. God, I missed you guys. I wanted to make this video in particular because it came up as I was hiring on a member of my team. Um, if you don't know me intimately, then you might not even know this at all. My business partner and I began a yoga retreat business. And we run yoga retreat style fundraisers for ethical animal sanctuaries and marine conservation projects. It is called Animal Friends Yoga Retreats. It's super wonderful and charismatic. I'll leave you some more information in the description box. But this question came from a wonderful, awesome woman that we onboarded as part of our team to help out with marketing. And she's not a yogi. So she was wondering what the yoga lifestyle was and what that was all about. So to begin with, the most important thing to know about the yoga lifestyle is that yoga is a philosophy. It's a system of philosophy, and it has 8 different branches. So it's a lot more than just the class that you take at the gym or like the pants that you buy to make your butt look nice. Yoga has a really rich history. It is over 5,000 years old. We have records of it that pretty much begin history. We have records that are, ancient. We have our Vedic texts that have been around since humans began writing and began keeping records of what we were doing. So the important things to know, and we're going to primarily focus on the ethics of yoga. Our ethical foundation within this 8-limbed philosophy occupies 2 of those branches of the yoga tree, if you will. And those are the yamas, which is my ethical code of conduct for how I interact with the world around me, and the niyamas, which is directly my relationship with myself. Sorry, I keep looking down. I'm like, I never know where the camera is. Where am I recording? So those form the entire foundation for yoga as a philosophy. As we climb the tree, we're going to find other things that maybe are more familiar to us. We'll get to breath work, which is one of our limbs. We'll get to asana, which are the movements of yoga, the things that you're doing when you show up to most classes at the gym, if they're not inclusive of more of the branches of yoga. We will also climb that tree and learn how to withdraw our senses from the world around us. We will practice single-pointed focus. We will practice meditation. So single-pointed focus and sense withdrawal are not themselves meditation. They are those are other branches on the yoga tree that help us become primed for meditation. I'm going to use the word successful meditation. Meditation doesn't always have a goal, but the purpose of our yoga philosophy leads us to that eighth branch on the tree, which is union. The actual yoga, the word yoga means union. What are we uniting with? We're forming union between ourselves and our God, both the immanent God and the transcendent God. So God within, God without, as above, so below, as within, so without, which is actually a great place to start with discussing our niyamas, which is, again, my service to myself, my ethical promises that I make to myself. And they begin way down with the basics of cleanliness, being pure of the body, not being smelly, not allowing my body to become dirty and have diseases befall me because of it. I want to practice not just physical cleanliness. I want to eat foods that are going to nourish me and keep me healthy and well. I need to have a clean environment so that I don't get sick. I need to have a good mental landscape, again, also so that I don't get sick. And so that cleanliness is really important for us. Moving on beyond that, once I have that cleanliness of especially my mind, comes contentment, happiness, practicing actually making yourself happy, not with worldly things, although those are totally fine. It's nice to have stuff and to have nice experiences. But what we want in the case of the yogic reach for contentment is building a life that is filled with joy, filled with authenticity to who you actually are at your core. In a more grounded and practical way, these are the steps that I would take to make myself confident, to make myself genuine. How do I show up in the world authentically? And how do I build a happy life for myself that isn't going to be swayed as a result of a bad thing happening, or whether or not I get the $10,000 bonus? We don't want our happiness to be wrapped up in circumstance. We want to actually build a real foundation for ourselves to be content with life. If we haven't built that, it's unlikely, it's not going to arise spontaneously. I'm going to just move my camera a little bit because I'm like leaning way over. I'm the worst with cameras. It's crazy. So we have cleanliness, we have contentedness, and now we'll move on to our third of our 5 niyamas, which is discipline. This is showing up to yourself even when it sucks. It's devotion to a practice. It's commitment to slowly but surely and steadily growing. It's holding commitments when that inner dialogue starts up of you're not good enough, or it's too scary, or you're never going to make it, or whatever kind of conditioning we come into the world with, because that's true. It's real for all of us. Most of us have some really shitty inner voices with some like dickhead things to say. So we need to have discipline to be committed to ourselves and to uncovering the best version of ourselves. And we owe that to ourselves. We really do. So going forward from that, and these aren't steps, you don't build one on top of the other, but they can be used in that way. So moving ahead from discipline of committing to myself, committing to becoming the best me, is I'll use the Sanskrit word because this is, it's pretty common right now. It's pretty buzzy. So if you go take a yoga class, you'll likely hear the word swadhyaya. And swadhyaya is self-examination. It's studying yourself, observing your thoughts, observing your emotions, diving deep into your own essence. Okay. So again, to reach back to that quote of as above, so below, we take that from Hermetic philosophy, but we believe in the God force, the Christ consciousness, the Krishna consciousness, which is God living within us expressing a portion of the Godhead, and then also seeing God in everything around us, God within, God without. It's the immanent God and the transcendent God as well. And when you go deep enough into your own genuine self, you go so small that you go big. If you go deep enough into your own heart, you find God. And that lends itself well to niyama number 5, which is surrender to the divine, finding complete peace with you, with your life, with the things that have happened to you, with all the things that are coming down the pike, with your role in this beautiful, crazy, fucked up, perfectly imperfect world. We don't need to be, on board with everything that happens in the world. But if you're staying in your lane and you're devoted to whatever your soul was put here to do, you're going to feel good. You're going to feel united with God, whatever the God happens to be for you. So that's a rundown of our niyamas, our ethical code of conduct that we hold to ourselves. And now we'll hop the fence into the yamas. Having gone through the niyamas, it's likely that you'll be able to see how it makes sense that we can kind of mirror those and just go a little bit bigger to positively affect our community at large. And we're going to start with another really popular Sanskrit word that you are very likely to hear in a yoga class, which is ahimsa. It's nonviolence, but it's also compassion and kindness. So to make clear what I'm talking about, I took this wonderful course. I dropped out of a PhD program. I'm like, this isn't for me. But I took one really awesome course with a professor that I adored. And it was biomedical ethics and legal issues. And we had to compare beneficence, which is specifically doing good, versus non-malfeasance, which is just simply not doing bad. So with non-malfeasance, you can do very little and like not make things worse, but we're actually called to be beneficent, make things better. And that's what ahimsa and nonviolence, but plus compassion and kindness is all about. And that can show up in a lot of ways. So if you know me personally, I am of some interesting spiritual lineages. So to me, any thought that you think can be a curse or it can be a blessing. So like in some churches, they'll say like, I speak blessings over you. But the same thing is true if you are thinking shitty thoughts. That's the same thing as cursing someone. So it's important that your ahimsa isn't just in being kind to people out on the street. And it's not necessarily or simply about adopting a vegetarian or a vegan lifestyle. If that calls to you, and it is also the path that causes the most beneficence, both to your body and its unique needs and to animals, great, go for it. Wonderful. Ahimsa is also about cleaning up your energy, cleaning up your mind so that your energetic signature as you call different people into your mind isn't stamping them with bad vibes. Come on, man. Like, who wants that? So ahimsa is number one. You'll hear that word a lot. Progressing, we move on to truthfulness. And truthfulness is not simply, I'm not going to lie or I'm not going to omit. It is heavily reliant on swadhyaya that we heard from our niyamas, self-study, being genuine, and coming to understand what the actual truth is for you before it comes out of your mouth. I think the easiest place to kind of point to what I'm talking about is if you've ever dated someone and in your breakup, you're like, oh, they were so dishonest with me. But you come to find out that it wasn't necessarily that they were trying to harm you or inflict pain. They simply just didn't know those things about themselves. And so it led them to come off as dishonest. So self-study helps us present more truthfully, more honestly. Going forward into non-stealing, but specifically abundance, which is being aware of what your material desires are and not getting completely wrapped up in them, acknowledging that there are spiritual principles, spiritual forces at play that also are enormous to your life. I think for this one thing that's been really helpful for me of focusing on abundance is learning to break away from some of my own patterning of we always have to save, we're only going to have just enough, and to actually take stock of like, it sounds so cheesy, and I'm not necessarily a person that'll tell you to go and count your blessings, but for me, it was valuable to slow down enough to acknowledge which needs were being met. And across the board, being that I'm a woman in America and we are the 1% worldwide, all of my needs are met. All of my physical needs are going to be met very likely for the entire, unless something incredible happens to me, they're met. They're done. I'm done. I'm good for the rest of my life. And part of down regulating and relaxing into that trust of abundance, my needs are going to be met. I trust in myself to have the skills and the tools and the drive and the whatever to be able to meet my needs for my lifetime, is relaxing out of that state of fear and survival. A lot of, if you're around my age, I'm going on 35, we were born to a generation that was very much in survival mode, especially if, I can't even say especially if, barring some very wealthy people, a lot of us were born to parents that were in survival mode. They got maybe a couple of jobs in their lifetime and they looked for the safest ones. I might not be speaking directly to you, but this was my experience. I know it'll resonate for someone. But they took the job, they worked it until they retired, and they waited on the stability of a pension, which is fine. But I think that adding in the element of noticing what I have, noticing that my needs are met, building trust in myself through the practice of becoming content and building the life I want, is really valuable for your satisfaction. And that is going to be something that reaches into your community, because you will teach your mindset. You will have the opportunity to model your mindset, just the way your teachers, when you were a child, modeled polite behavior. They might go out into the hallway and say, "Good morning, Mrs. Smith." They would do the things that they thought you would be able to template off of and learn from. They would model them. So going forward, you'll also know the word Brahmacharya. Brahmacharya is sometimes translated as celibacy. It's more important to use it as self-restraint or moderation. I really like the term moderation because many of us are not celibate. Some of us are, especially at different phases of life, but it's noticing where your boundaries are, having an ebb and a flow to your life to where you're not chronically overindulging. And so part of that moderation is like all things in moderation, including moderation. But we want to look for those rough edges where we're inclined to be really indulgent in things that we know are not going to serve us or our community in a positive way. So finally, we arrive at non-possessiveness, which it might be more applicable for us to say generosity, lack of greed, or maybe there's some greed there, but specifically generosity, a spirit of sharing, of building your community rather than being a predator in your own community. We know that just, it may have been how things have been done for a while, but that's proving to not have served us well. So with your abundance, which you can now see thanks to your new mindset, is generosity, knowing that there's plenty, being able to be that pillar in the community that gives generously when it's available. And there's always a season for that. Having confidence in your ability to give and to receive, because at the end of the day, once again, yoga is the journey of the self, through the self, to the self, going in and in and in and in to arrive at God, knowing that you're going to be taken care of. Yoga is a spiritual journey. You might end up with a cute butt or like whatever. Personally, I've been a bodybuilder. I'm like, that's not where I go to get my butt. But yoga is a spiritual journey. It can be a lot of different things in the West. It can be, you can come into yoga with whatever goal you have, but ultimately, if you expand to practicing all 8 limbs, you'll go in and in and in, and you will arrive at the transcendent God that is all around you in your community, reflected back in the faces of your kids, in the leaves on the trees, in the mirror that's looking at you, and you'll recognize yourself as God, as one with the Christ consciousness, as one with your divine higher essence. We can get there. And there are many of us that are reaching for that right as we speak. So with that, my friends, we're going to wrap it up. I love you. I'm so happy to be back on YouTube with you. Mwah, mwah, mwah. I love you so much. Until next time, mwah, all my love.